Good morning, church. It's good to be in worship with you this morning. I'm Pastor Amanda, and if you are a guest with us this morning, we say welcome to you and welcome from this sacred space to your sacred space. And if you've been in worship at Grace for a long time, of course, welcome home. As we continue forward in this digital space, we recognize that we are connected by the love of God that transcends all pandemics, the love of God that transcends all construction, the love of God that transcends all the hardships that we may be experiencing and feeling disconnected from. It transcends all of that, and it brings us back together no matter where we are. And that is why, wherever you are right now, this morning, you are in a sacred space, and you have come to be in worship with God and with one another. Which is why I want to remind you that there is some opportunity starting at 11 a.m. after this worship service, that we will gather in a Zoom room, so to speak, and have our fellowship time. You can find the link on the Facebook page or in your email inbox, as I sent out the link and also a tutorial video to watch if this might be your first Zoom attempt. It will walk you through those steps on what to expect and how to navigate signing in to a Zoom conversation. So I look forward to seeing all of you, whoever can make it, at 11 a.m. Bring your coffee cup, bring your tea, bring your orange juice, and just be prepared to find connection again in that digital space with one another and with myself. The other thing I want to remind you about is that the backpack blessings were sent to the families this past week. And families, if your kiddos got off to school, which I know they did this past week, we hope you all had as smooth as can be, knowing that as a parent myself, that is a relative term, smooth, but that your first week in school was received with excitement and some joy. But I want to also remind you as young families to, if you can and if you're willing, to post a picture of your kiddos with their backpacks and the blessings that were provided, and post those on our Facebook page as a way of sharing the love of God and the joy of God with one another. And then to also take time to use that QR code that was in that care package and fill out that survey that will help me better understand where you are and what your needs are for your families as we move forward together during this time. And then the other announcement, speaking of kiddos, is that we, instead of doing a children's message during a Sunday worship digital service, we are actually going to be exploring offering a brief children's moment that will be shared on the Facebook page on Wednesday evenings. And as families and as kids, you can gather around the computer or iPad or phone, whatever works for your family, and watch that together and engage with your kiddos together. It's a way of offering some special time, concentrated time, for our kiddos during this digital time that we are being church. And they will have their special time on Wednesday nights where they can view that in the comfort of their own homes with you as their family gathered around them. So watch for that. It will appear Wednesday evening around 6 p.m. on the Facebook page, and you're welcome to watch it when it's convenient for your family. But in the meantime, Theo is going to stay with me on this chair behind me for the rest of the service. Let us worship.
I rest in you, O God. I am in your safekeeping, body and soul held in peace. My heart cries out to you, my God. All that upsets me, you see. All that disturbs me, you understand. Only here in your presence am I fully known. I am wrapped in grace. I rest in you, O God. I am in your safekeeping. Body and soul held in peace. I try to relax, but anger rattles me. I try to relax, but my failings niggle at me. Be still. Be silent. Put your trust in the Lord. I rest in you, O God. I am in your safekeeping. Body and soul held in peace. In the stillness, the light of your face shines. My heart turns to thankfulness and is glad. I have more than enough. You, Lord, are more than enough. I lie down to sleep, safe and sound. I rest in you, O God. I am in your safekeeping. Body and soul held in peace. Be still and rest. You are held in peace.
Our scripture reading comes from the book of James in the New Testament. James 1, 19 through 27. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen and slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. Therefore, rid yourselves of all sordidness and rank growth of wickedness, and welcome with meekness the implanted word that has the power to save your souls. Be doers of the word, and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. For if any are hearers of the word and not doers, they are like those who look at themselves in a mirror. For they look at themselves and going away immediately forget what they look like. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. If any think they are religious and do not bridle their tongues, but deceive their hearts, their religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world.
Silently now I wait.
guy sets off to work in the morning in his car. And just before he gets to work, he is pulled over by a policewoman. Now, the policewoman gets out of her car and walks up to his window. The driver then inquires to her, "Why'd you stop me, officer? I didn't do anything wrong." But the officer says, "Well, I watched you for a while and was following you. And when you pulled out into traffic, I noticed that you honked your horn and made some rude gestures towards the people who wouldn't let you out. Later, I noticed that you cut off a car in front of you because they merged too slowly onto the freeway in front of you. And then when you got onto the side streets and were stuck in traffic at a light, you were beating your fists against your steering wheel and swearing to yourself. I also noticed when the light turned green, you didn't mind the woman who was crossing the street and didn't quite fully make it across in time before the light turned red on her end and you almost hit her." The man then takes a deep breath and thinks about what she said. But then he replies, "Well, but yes, officer, but none of those things are illegal. So why did you pull me over?" And the policewoman responds, "No, you're right. They are not illegal. But here's the problem. I stopped you because you have a Christian symbol on your bumper sticker, and so I just presumed that the car was stolen." Good morning, friends. We are starting a sermon series that is going to look at the letter of James in the New Testament. And to my knowledge of the letter of James and my experience growing up in mainline Protestant churches is that it's a letter that doesn't really get a lot of attention, truly. And it's unfortunate, I think. But one of the things about the letter of James that makes it, I guess, infamous in our Western Christian tradition is that this is the writing or the letter or the book, however you want to look at it, as that really got Martin Luther going. Not Martin Luther King Jr., I'm talking about the Martin Luther. Martin Luther had a very hard time with this book, with this letter, with this writing. Because what Martin Luther saw in this was a dangerous slippery slope that he saw of uplifting just actions and not faith. That just do good, be doers, right? It's trying to present this image that to be followers of the way, followers of Jesus, is to do good. And Martin Luther said, hold on, time out. Works aren't what get you into heaven. That was his big shtick, okay, with the Catholic Church. And it's kind of known in our Western Christian tradition that Martin Luther helped give this letter of James a bad rap. And it is unfortunate because this letter is rich. It is a rich text that invites us as Christians, as people who want to be followers of the way, to step back and ask ourselves the question, what does it really mean to be doers of the word? How do we get there? How do we understand that invitation to be doers of the word? And so for the next 4 weeks, we are going to explore this because I thought, why not? It is September. Our kiddos are all going back to school. We have adults in our lives who maybe are teachers or who they themselves are going back to school to study the word, right? Not the Christian word, but to study words, to study and gain knowledge. Well, as Christians, we have that same imperative for us within our faith to study the word. And to figure out what it means to not just study the word, but to be doers of the word. And I also think that we haven't gotten that far away from that age-old debate of works righteousness or right belief. and we think about it in either or terms. And different Christian traditions and paths have focused and emphasized one or the other. Because it's so hard, I think, for us to read a text like James and hear that actually what James is saying is both and. There has to be a relentless pursuit of knowing the word. But like that opening joke I told, if you caught the punchline, is that it doesn't matter how much we know. It's not about how much we study and can absorb in theory, because theory is a wonderful place to exist. And it's wonderful, you know why? Because it doesn't require and cost us or risk us anything. We can just float in the infinite tank of theory and swim around and get nowhere. But it's safe. And the letter of James, this book that was written to Christians in the early 1st, 2nd century, was actually the imperative to relentlessly pursue God, know God, love God. But then you have to do something with it, and you have to be doers of the word. You have to be, as I think what James is trying to say in this opening mantra that was read, you have to live your faith in an engaged and embodied way. And of course, he takes on this idea of anger, how the way that we speak and use our words matters. And if anything, my friends, this morning to take away from this worship service, from this sermon, is just the fact that we have seen over the last 4 years both the power of words and how the careless use of words can numb us out to what is real. From our political climate to even our church internal climates, how we use words matters. And James is trying to get on that in this first chapter. But what James is really saying in this first chapter is a much larger statement about how do we live the way? How do we be the word? Not just do, but be the word. Well, first and foremost, are we going to be pursuers of that word? So in James's time, much like I think in our own time, here in the 21st century, here in America, the world's a messy place, is it not? Absolutely and utterly messy. I think, Theo, world's a messy place, isn't it? Okay, Theo agrees. It's hard. It's really hard to learn how to be Christian. It's hard to learn, where does our culture stop and the gospel begin? Or better yet, where does the gospel begin and take over our culture as a critique of our culture? We have a hard time figuring that out because at the end of the day, we are human and we are immersed in our own cultures, and our cultures impact our understanding of how we read and view and live the gospel. But the gospel, according to James, even in his time, is that the way to be followers and practitioners of the way takes practice. It takes relentless pursuit of God in one's heart, in one's soul, and in one's being. And that relentless pursuit of God first, not us and what we think we want, but how do we really, truly humble ourselves to the point where we recognize we are a part of this mess, this messy world, and that God is calling us into a place to be the hands and feet of Christ, to help clean up the mess, right? To help limit the damage that the mess is creating within our own lives and within our communities and within our countries and within our globe. Because we live in insanity. You have heard me say this. You've heard me preach this ad nauseum, but I will keep saying it because this is what James is trying to say. The world is insane. We humans, we do very impractical things that continue to harm ourselves and other people. So I'm using the word insane in that way. I do not want to misuse that term, and I don't want us to degrade that term, because it has been used to cause harm to others who live with mental illness. So, but we are living in a patterned world that is chaotic, that is self-obsessed. And instead of being obsessed with the journey into the heart of God, it takes its own journey into itself. And James was saying that here. But taking the journey into the heart of God is what sets us free from the obsessions, from our self-obsessions that tear this world down and help add to the insanity. When we actually own the journey, relentlessly pursue the heart of God, which is the true spiritual path of all mystics, whether Islamic mystics, Buddhist mystics, Jewish mystics, Christian mystics, they were all after the same thing, which is a relentless pursuit of the spiritual life that we are all called to live and that we are all capable of living. But we have to make some choices to do it. Instead of continuing to contribute to those patterns, those systems that tear down our communities, that tear down our families, and that tear down ourselves. And I think what James is getting at too in this first chapter about religion, again, here he goes. Religion that is grounded in human beings will always reveal the messy. It will always reveal, well, he calls it worthlessness. That's biting, but maybe we have to hear that. The religion, because the interesting thing about religion is God. Remember that sermon series I did? And James is saying it, and he's reiterating it here. But what kind of God is this God? Well, God is God who cares for the orphans and the widows in their distress. And what is being hearkened on here, especially with the use of our words and our anger, is this idea of community. When we pursue God relentlessly, we are pursuing the well-being of the community. And we will not be blunted by the awfulness of this world, because if we are a part of the awfulness of the world and we stay in it and we just do as a way to try to get out of it without pursuing that heart of God, to know that there is something bigger than the mess, something more tangible to us than the mess in which we all live in this world, and the suffering, that there is an energy and a power within us and around us that is always, with creativity, seeking to transform that suffering into healing and goodness for all, for the community, because we are interconnected with one another and God. Hence, the very core of the Torah. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, and love your neighbor as yourselves. It's not two separate commandments, it's one. Loving God is to love the community. And the community that is suffering because we're not taking the time to step back and pursue that heart of God. But as people of the way, we have to have something or some way to help us consistently, truly consistently reset our understanding of how we show up in the world. We have to have something in our lives, because if we're just doing, which is that social justice path, and that is a good path, I am not belaboring that as a negative thing. That's that commitment to social justice and doing the justice work of God. That is necessary. Absolutely. But if we don't have the other side to the puzzle, which is that pursuit, that spiritual pursuit of God, where we pause, where we take that deep step back and that deep breath back and exhale. Reset ourselves with something that is grounded in that which is beyond the madness of the world. And that is the way of Christ. That is the way of wisdom. James writes later on in this book, and we'll get to that there is a way of wisdom here. And wisdom is something that transcends culture, and it also transcends the madness and that insanity. And when we can pull from the wisdom of God, that's when our doing becomes effective. So they have to be both and. And it's not even just right belief. It's, are you relentlessly pursuing the heart of God? See, there's a Japanese saying called hansai. Hansai. And what hansai is relentless self-reflection as a way to provide a positive impact on the culture in which you live. I'll say that again. Hansai. The relentless self-reflection that goes to provide a way and a positive impact on the culture in which you live. In other words, hansai is exactly the same thing as what James is trying to teach in this opening chapter to the early Christians, to the early people of the way. If you are not relentlessly pursuing something that is beyond yourself, and when the hansai concept here talks about self-reflection, that is different than self-obsession and false self-belief. False self-belief is truly just like, I'm fine, it's fine. I mean, things are a little off here and there, but I'm fine. That's just as much of a delusion in James's world as being so self-obsessed that all you do is take pictures and selfies and embrace that narcissistic culture that really is trying to hold on to us and get us to become a part of it and bring our religion into it. James is saying, wait a second. Ground yourself in the law of God. Ground yourself in Torah. James was very, very Jewish in his perspective in this opening chapter. Because the law, he said, is about enhancing our lives in community by how we act with and towards one another. See, what James is getting at is because our understanding impacts our action, right? If we're not pursuing a deeper understanding and pursuing relentlessly that wisdom that gets us outside of ourselves and into the heart of God, into the hands and feet and being of Christ. If we're not doing that, then our actions are just going to be as erratic as the world that we live in. So pursue it relentlessly because our understanding impacts our action. And what is it, obviously, that we are relentlessly pursuing? James is saying in this opening chapter, he says, look towards the law. Okay, we can dissect that another time. But let's think of the law this way. The law in the time of James and for Jews across the Mediterranean region understood that the law is a moral exhortation that sanctifies all human life and its relational nature. I'm going to say that again. The law is the moral exhortation that sanctifies all human life and its relational nature. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, sanctifying all life. God, who is the creator of all, including you and me, including Theo. God is the creator of all. And God is the one who sanctifies our lives. And we have to learn what that means to be sanctified. Wow, that's an amazing invitation, don't you think? Did you know your life is sanctified? Did you know you live and have and breathe and are holy people? We don't hear that enough. We don't hear that enough. But we're holy in so much as we see our neighbor as the same. and love your neighbor as yourself. And of course, this journey into the heart of God, let's not forget, friends, this journey isn't a Sunday morning thing. It's not a Sunday morning thing when you're 5 years old or when you're 50 years old. It is from the time you take your first breath to the time you exhale your last breath. Faith in God, the pursuit of God, is a relentless journey that goes our whole life long. It's a journey of life improvement. It's a community improvement. It's a social improvement. It's a global improvement. So here we are. James is saying, get your hands dirty, friends. But you have to get your hands dirty. You have to become the solution to what is messy. You have to become a solution to the problem in the world. The problem that seems so insurmountable. But if you're not going to take small little steps to get there, to be the solution, to be the hands and feet of Christ on this world, then you are not living the way of Christ. Because it's not that we are changed by our actions, but rather we are changed by the God within us to act in a way that changes the world that we live in. See here again, James, what he's doing is marrying the two of social justice and spiritual, relentless pursuit of God's heart. Are they one and the same? They sure are. They can be. But where are the pauses? Where are the intentional pursuit to fill your heart with the heart of God? To pursue the law, so to speak, right? As James was talking about it in the first century. Because we're not changed just by our actions. We're changed by the God within us. We were changed by the God within us. And the only way we can know the God within us is to relentlessly pursue that question. Who are you, God? Where are you within me? What is it you are calling me to be and do in this world? If that is not a relentless pursuit, James is saying you're never going to get your hands dirty. But you have to get your hands dirty if you are to be followers of the way. So we're changed by the God within us to act in ways that change the world we live in. There's going to be some wonderful, simple, but meaningful ways that I'm going to be exploring with you in the coming months of how to relentlessly pursue God. How to relentlessly pursue God while also getting our hands dirty. Because friends, the thing I do not want us, you, me, whoever's watching this right now, I don't want us to be blunted to the awfulness of the world and therefore become complacent and lose the heart of the gospel that we have been called to become in our world. Amen.
God's faith.
Yesterday was the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And when we speak of the awfulness in the world, this is one of those pivotal times in the history here in America, let alone the West in general, as a reminder that there is still a lot of awfulness in the world, and there is much work of healing and reconciliation to do. So this morning, I'm going to be praying a prayer of memorial to the 20th anniversary of 9/11. But before we do that, I want to lift up these prayers for Kay Pasvogel, who was hospitalized and is now home and healing. And also for Ross, who is the Cub Master Carrie's father, one of our troops here, who was put on hospice and was requesting prayers for the family. And so friends, please continue to email me or call Linda in the office to share any prayers that you would like recognized in our worship services digitally in these next coming months. But let us now be in this spirit of prayer. We remember, God of history and remembrance, we remember. We remember when the towers fell and the lives were lost. We remember the dust and the smoke, the despair and the grief. We remember that sense of vulnerability and shock. We remember the numbness that overwhelmed us as we watched our screen for hours and hours, waiting for an explanation and understanding that never came. We remember. We remember, God of hope and presence. We remember. We remember the heroes, those who rushed to help, who guided the wounded down innumerable flights of stairs, who rose to overwhelm those who held death in their hands. We remember the hours and the days of binding wounds and healing hurts, giving comfort and drying tears. We remember words of support and compassion from nations far and wide. We remember. We remember in part because we see the ripples of that tragic day continue to impact our world 20 years later. We grieve with allies today as our allies grieved with us 20 years ago. And together we wonder if there will ever be an end. If there will ever be an end to violence, to war, to hatred, to death. We remember and we grieve our world's inability to learn the things that lead to peace. We call to you now in our remembrance, Christ of justice and of peace. Give us a will as people of your way, to truly pray that your kingdom may come on earth as it is in heaven. So on this day of solemn remembrance, may we honor the lives that were lost in this tragic act. May we give thanks for those who served and saved, rendered aid and assistance. May we give comfort to those who live with the loss that came that day. May we seek justice and peace where it is within our ability, and rely on you when the ability escapes us. On this day of solemn remembrance, may we build what has been torn down. May we mend what has been broken. And may we live your love when hate seems to reign. And may we bear witness to the cause of peace. And so we say this prayer now together, where we are with Christians throughout the world, that bind us to truly the imperative of peace in you, O God. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. We trust in a God of abundance, and we hold tightly to the promise that there will always be enough, and that all that we have comes from God. And so from this place, we're going to invite you in your own homes to be in a time of discernment around the ways in which you give freely back to God with your financial resources, with your time, with your gifts and your skills. Those things that we promised to the church in our baptism, the things we promised to God to say, you are the abundance within me and through me. And so we act in that space and release that abundance. There's a guarantee here at Grace Church that as you continue to practice this spiritual discipline of tithing, that if you send your tithe in the mail, there is somebody here on site and will be received by somebody here in the office in a timely manner. So thank you, as we say thank you together to our God of abundance. My beloveds, the Lord bless you and the Lord keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.